A snow leopard brought her dying cub to this old man. Then the unbelievable happened. In the heart of the snow-covered mountains, an old man's quiet life was forever changed when a snow leopard appeared on his doorstep, carrying her dying cub in her mouth. With no hope left, the mother leopard entrusted the man with her child, silently pleading for his help in a way no one could have imagined. What followed next defied the very laws of nature, as a bond formed between man and beast, a bond that would challenge everything they knew about survival and trust. In a small, quiet village nestled among snow-capped mountains, Benjamin lived alone in a simple wooden house. His life was solitary, spent tending to his garden, mending fences, and quietly observing the world around him. For years the mountains had been his only companions, and he had grown to love the peace and rhythm of nature. Though he had no family, Benjamin found comfort in the wilderness, its harsh winters, blooming springs, warm summers, and golden autumns. Each season brought its own quiet beauty, and he had learned to live in harmony with it. The village, though small, was home to a handful of people, most of whom were farmers and woodworkers. Yet despite the camaraderie, Benjamin preferred solitude. He had watched children grow and leave for the city, but the mountains remained constant, unchanging. Life was simple and steady, each day blending into the next with a quiet rhythm that suited him perfectly. Benjamin had spent decades studying the wildlife around him, learning the patterns of migration, the signs of coming storms, the tracks left in fresh snow. He understood the language of nature in a way few others could. On this particular morning, the sky was painted with soft hues of orange and pink as the sun rose over the mountain range. The snow crunched beneath Benjamin's boots as he stepped onto his porch, a steaming cup of tea in hand. The chill of the morning air invigorated him, and he inhaled deeply, savoring the stillness of the world around him. It was a perfect winter day, calm, serene, untouched by the chaos of the world beyond the mountains. But today was different. As Benjamin stood by the porch, his eyes caught a flicker of movement at the edge of the forest. It was faint at first, just a shadow among the trees. But then, as the figure drew nearer, Benjamin's heart skipped a beat. It was no ordinary animal. A snow leopard emerged from the woods, its pale fur almost blending into the snowy landscape. It was beautiful, majestic, yet there was something unsettling in the way it moved, slow, deliberate, burdened. Benjamin's heart quickened. Snow leopards were rare, their presence in the mountains a sign of the wilderness's untouched beauty. But this one wasn't hunting. It moved cautiously, almost as if weighed down by something heavy, something precious. And then Benjamin saw what it was carrying, a cub. A tiny, limp form covered in blood, barely clinging to life. The mother leopard's amber eyes locked onto his, and in that moment, Benjamin understood. This was not a predator approaching. This was a mother, desperate for help, embodied in fur and fierce determination.
With no time to lose, Benjamin moved forward, his mind racing with questions and doubts. He approached the cub slowly and with great care took it from the mother's mouth. The leopard hissed softly, a warning perhaps, but made no move to stop him. As Benjamin cradled the cub in his arms, he felt a deep responsibility settle in his chest like a stone. He had never known an animal to trust a human like this, and he couldn't ignore that trust. Benjamin carried the cub inside, his steps heavy with the knowledge that its survival now rested in his hands. The mother leopard stood at the edge of the forest, watching, waiting. Her presence was like a weight on his shoulders, a constant reminder that he had been chosen for this task. Benjamin knew that time was running out for the cub, and the weight of the decision hung over him like the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Inside, the warmth of his cabin, Benjamin gently laid the injured cub on the wooden table. Its tiny body, though fragile, still clung to life, its shallow breaths the only sign of its struggle to survive. Benjamin's hands, though calloused from years of labor, trembled as he assessed the wound. The cub's side was torn open, a deep gash that had bled freely, and one of its legs was twisted at an unnatural angle. Benjamin knew immediately it needed more than basic care. It needed skilled hands, and fast. His mind raced through possibilities. He had spent his life in the wild, studying animals, knowing the intricacies of nature, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The mother snow leopard had trusted him with her cub, and in doing so had placed her hope in him, an act of faith he could not ignore. But what if he failed? What if his hands weren't steady enough, his knowledge not deep enough? Benjamin turned to grab his old first aid kit, his movements sharp and efficient, though his heart was heavy. The cub's tiny body felt so fragile, and he was keenly aware that every second counted. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping through his fingers like sand. The cub's breathing grew weaker, the wound more severe than he'd anticipated. He tried to steady his nerves, remembering the basics: stop the bleeding, keep the cub warm, and try to stabilize it. But still there was a gnawing fear in the pit of his stomach. Would it be enough? Was he doing it right? He glanced through the window. The mother leopard still stood at the edge of the forest, her gaze fixed at the cabin as if she knew everything that was happening inside. That's when Benjamin made his decision. He grabbed his satellite phone with trembling fingers and dialed the number of James, who could reach Sarah, the local wildlife expert. She had years of experience working with injured animals, and she was the only one who could offer the knowledge and skill needed to save the cub. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "James here." "It's Benjamin," he said quickly, urgency coloring every word. "I've got a snow leopard cub here. It's badly injured. The mother brought it to me, and it's in bad shape. I need Sarah." There was a pause, a deep breath on the other end before James responded. "All right, I'll call Sarah immediately. You need to stabilize it the best you can. Keep it warm and stop the bleeding." Benjamin nodded, even though James couldn't see him. "I'll do my best. Please, hurry." After ending the call, Benjamin stood still for a moment, his eyes drifting to the cub. It was barely breathing now, and a heavy weight of uncertainty pressed against his chest. He kept the cub wrapped in a warm woolen blanket, doing everything he could to keep its tiny body from succumbing to the cold and shock. The wind howled outside, but inside the cabin was quiet, save for the soft crackle of the fire and the occasional faint whimper from the cub. Benjamin paced the floor, his mind constantly drifting back to the fragile life on his table. Each shallow breath it took seemed weaker than the last. He couldn't stop thinking about the mother leopard standing in the snow, waiting in silence. Minutes felt like hours. With each passing second, Benjamin's heart raced faster and faster. The weight of the cub's life, so fragile and so dependent on him, pressed heavily against his conscience. Just then, a sound broke the stillness. An engine. The distant hum of a vehicle grew louder, the crunch of tires over snow signaling Sarah's arrival. Relief flooded through Benjamin like warm water. She was here. He rushed to the door and opened it before she could knock, stepping aside to let her in. Sarah wasted no time. Without exchanging politeness, she dropped her bag on the table and knelt beside the cub, her focus entirely on the little animal in front of her.
Benjamin stepped back, giving her the space she needed, though his eyes never left her hands as they moved with practiced speed. He watched as she worked, her every motion measured and efficient. Minutes later, Sarah paused, her hand still over the cub. She met Benjamin's gaze with serious eyes. "It's still critical," she said quietly, "but we're not out of options yet. We'll keep it warm, give it fluids, and hope the wound doesn't become infected. You've done well, Benjamin. We've got a fighting chance. Benjamin nodded, the weight of the words sinking in. There was hope. It wasn't certain, but there was a chance. The night was long, filled with quiet anticipation and the steady rhythm of Sarah's hands working over the cub. The hours stretched on, each one a reminder of how fragile the life before them truly was. Despite Sarah's expertise, the cub remained weak, its small body trembling even in the warmth of the blankets. Sarah didn't sleep. She worked tirelessly, keeping the cub warm, feeding it small amounts of water, checking its pulse, its wounds, its temperature. Benjamin watched from nearby, feeling helpless but grateful. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and somewhere in the darkness, the mother leopard waited. Just as the first light of dawn began to break, Benjamin saw it, a faint flicker of movement from the cub. Its small chest rose and fell with a bit more strength than before. The breathing was deeper, the pulse steadier. Sarah's eyes met Benjamin's, and she gave him a small, reassuring nod. It's holding on. That's a very good sign. The morning came slowly, the first light casting a soft glow over the cabin. The cub had made it through the night. Its breaths were stronger now, more rhythmic, and its eyes, though dull with exhaustion, were more alert. Benjamin's heart swelled with relief and gratitude. Around midday, Benjamin made his decision. It was time to let the cub return to where it belonged. He stepped outside, the cold air biting at his skin, and walked slowly toward the edge of the forest with the cub wrapped carefully in his arms. The moment he stepped into the clearing, he saw her, the mother leopard, standing as still as the trees. Their eyes met for a brief moment. No words, no growls, just a silent understanding that passed between them. Benjamin placed the cub gently on the snow. The mother moved forward and nuzzled it with a tenderness that belied her powerful nature. For a long moment she sniffed her cub, her eyes softening as she recognized the familiar scent. The cub stirred, letting out a weak but hopeful cry. Benjamin stepped back, his heart full. The cub had survived, and it was going back to the wild where it belonged. With one last glance, Benjamin turned to leave, knowing the mother and cub would disappear into the forest together, as nature intended. As Benjamin walked back to his cabin, the weight of the experience settled in his chest. The lesson was clear. Trust, compassion, and the bond between all living creatures are powerful forces that transcend even the wildest of boundaries.